I'm delighted and eager to get to our next guest. He's the Deputy Leader of Reform UK. He's the Member of Parliament for Boston and Skegness. It is Richard Tice MP. Hello, Richard. How are you?
Very well, thank you, Jonathan. Good evening. And another day. What a day. Listening to Keir Starmer snore along. Goodness me.
Well, did you manage to stay awake, Richard, to see the speech, or have you just seen the highlights? And I'd love to know kind of what is your / the Reform's view of what we saw today? Anything that you fear, anything that you think's interesting, anything you think's actually going to work?
Bluntly, I've got better things to do with my time than to listen to the whole speech. So I've just looked at highlights and read snippets that confirmed what we basically knew, which was that there is actually nothing new in this speech. It's just a bunch of platitudes, and he's sort of diluted certain things with regard to growth. Now he's sort of just saying he wants to grow fast. He's reduced that commitment. The thing he's stuck with is the mad, absolutely ludicrous and job-destroying, industry-killing, economy-killing net zero plan to get to clean power by 2030, which A, he can't get to, B, it's just going to make us all poorer, and C, will make zero difference whatsoever to climate change, which has been going on for millions of years and always will. And he's missed out the big elephant in the room that, of course, no one wants to talk about except us at Reform and a few other folk, which is immigration. Not a word about it. And yet it's one of the key reasons why we're soaring in the polls.
Well,
and I'm sure we'll come on to that in a moment.
Absolutely, Richard. Were you shocked he didn't go on immigration? Bearing in mind, we've had all this briefing that Morgan McSweeney's been looking at why the Democrats lost so resoundingly to President-elect Trump. Are you baffled that he's dropped any kind of pledge on immigration and just hoping that we'll take his word for it? Or do you think it just shows it's the same old Labour, that yet again on immigration they go missing? Because Sir Keir Starmer simply doesn't have any real beliefs or convictions in this area, because he was someone who wanted to remain free movement, retaining free movement. Obviously he ran for that on that platform for Labour leader. He is opposed to Conservatives every opportunity, and he signed that letter that kept foreign national defenders in this country. Do you just think it's the fact that he just doesn't believe in it?
I don't think he believes in it. I think he's completely out of touch because he doesn't see the consequences of it in his own elite, cosy environment. And, fundamentally, there are some people in Labour who understand it. The sort of the traditional, socially conservative part of the Labour movement, they completely get this. But the modern elitist Labour, they don't understand this at all. And look, the numbers are absolutely catastrophic. 906,000 net in the years June 23. We've got an establishment that doesn't want to talk about it, and parts of the establishment in the ONS that can't count. I mean, how you can get those numbers wrong by a mere 230,000 and then try not to tell anybody by claiming it was a reduction when actually this year's number was an increase on the number announced a year ago. I mean, the whole thing is just scandalous, and it's made us poorer financially. It's made the quality of life poorer. It's made the public services poorer. I mean, in the last in the last 2 years, we've seen 1.6 million people net coming into the country. I mean, it's an utter catastrophe, and for Keir Starmer not to refer to that, not to understand that, shows just how out of touch he and his advisors are. I mean, this is what people want to hear about. And I truly believe it's one of the key reasons why we're going up in the polls.
Now, Richard, you'll be one of the few people who've actually gone into Parliament, having had a significant business background, obviously built a business from the ground up. Do you find it quite ironic that the Prime Minister's trying to sell that he's going to improve living standards when the OBR, the Office for Budget Responsibility, themselves say, at best, they predict we'll see a 0.5% increase in household disposable income year on year. That they themselves have said inflation will go up, mortgages will go up, wages will be suppressed, debt on the government will increase, which means less money to invest in public services. Obviously, we've got the Bank of England today saying, lo and behold, what you and I'm sure many others knew in the country already, jobs will be lost and wages will actually go down in their estimation. The IFS obviously having had a very stern look as well. The family farm tax is going to destroy farms. Are you just gobsmacked that, again, we have a cabinet with no one I don't think has ever actually worked in business other than being a trade union rep in a business. Do you find it just utterly shocking that we find ourselves in this situation?
Well, I invented the word Starmageddon at the beginning of 2024. I didn't realise it would become Starmageddon on steroids quite so quickly. You've just superbly reeled out the list of catastrophic failures. And of course, if you have people who've never been involved in setting up, running a business, losing sleep over whether or not you can make payroll, understanding that actually profit and risk are vital things to be, you've got to achieve a profit and you've got to take risk, and we should be celebrating risk. So look, we're in deep trouble. This was the ultimate blunder budget. That's what it was in so many ways. And sadly, people are losing their jobs as we speak. Not only from all of the consequences of the budget, the ludicrous net national insurance increases, and of course the grief tax on farmers, family farm tax, the business property relief, all of the other costs going on, the extra employment regulations. But the big one is, of course, the cost of net zero. We've seen thousands of jobs being lost in the steel industry. I've been talking about that. I was asking about it this morning in the chamber. The automotive industry, we saw 1,100 jobs slain on the net zero altar just last Wednesday. The Secretary of State for Business called me out of touch because I was challenging him on this. And yet the following day, another few hundred jobs were destroyed. So look, this is the big one. This is what's, amongst everything, going to make us poorer. That and mass immigration are having huge consequences. And the OBR forecast that you just referred to there, Jonathan, they assume net immigration of 300,000, but those numbers have already been blown out of the water. So your 0.5% disposable increase per head, that's not going to be met. I mean, already the growth numbers are lower overall. So per person, we're going to continue to get poorer. And it's a very bleak picture as we head into the coldest part of the year.
In your constituency of Boston Skegness, do you know of any businesses that have already confirmed to you that job losses are going to have to happen, or they're indeed pulling business growth or investment at all?
Yes, I've had farmers telling me they've cancelled expansion plans, they've cancelled equipment purchase plans. I've had a publican saying that he's scrapped a plan to open another pub nearby in Boston. So look, this has consequences, and people have confirmed that. I was just speaking to someone yesterday who's confirmed that their pub, they're shutting for 2 days a week. And that's going to mean part-time jobs are gone. I think this is going to hit very hard, very quickly. And it's just desperately sad because it's so unnecessary. No one wishes the damage and the ill upon us. But then, frankly, if you employ someone as your Chancellor of the Exchequer, who's got no idea about accounts, who pretends to be an economist and clearly wasn't an economist, has not run a business, and is actually just Rachel from accounts, then what do you expect?
That was one of my favourite moments, I must confess, when Lee, who does drop a zinger in the chamber, Rachel from accounts, I thought that was brilliant. Now, Richard, you alluded to it earlier. There is this poll that has certainly set the cat amongst the pigeons that has Reform UK in second place. The Conservatives, I think, only 1% behind. Labour now down in third. That's adding to a poll earlier that showed that Reform are neck and neck with Plaid Cymru and with Labour in Wales, where it looks like you could officially end up being the opposition, or even potentially ending up being the largest party in the Senate there in the 2026 elections. Obviously, we've seen electoral victories in council by-elections, and of course there is the big by-elections coming where the Conservative Party overwhelmingly holds a lot of these seats because obviously there was the COVID vaccine boost bounce in that election, as well as obviously this being a lot of what would be traditional Shyland. These polls, a lot of people quickly say it's one poll, it's an outlier, and we're still 4 years away. But it does go to prove that there is some momentum. And how is it feeling in Reform HQ, seeing such polls coming out? And is it reflective of what you're seeing on the ground?
It is definitely reflective of what we're seeing and hearing on the ground. And you've hit on the key word there, which is momentum. And all of the polls are showing us nudging up in a positive trend. And obviously, you can't keep going up. So they'll bounce around. But I don't think that we've ever had before, in normal times, 3 parties polling in the 20s. And I said to people literally this week, I said, I could envisage a situation in 6 to 12 months where Labour are polling third. I didn't realise it would happen quite so quickly, but it's a sign of just how catastrophically bad they are. Look, you know, in the world of politics, it's not easy. I guess it shouldn't be easy. And of course, we'll make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. But as long as we keep learning lessons, keep working hard, we've got, as you say, the May elections next year. I'm very excited about the potential for the new mayoralty in Lincolnshire, county elections in Lincolnshire, and obviously then the following year is Wales and Holyrood. They've got proportional representation. They could be remarkable, and there's no question that I think we can provide a seismic shock over the next 18 months to British politics.
I must confess, I've said actually for a long time, actually before I saw Dame Andrea Jenkyns' defection essentially from the Conservative Party to Reform UK, that I thought Lincolnshire would be a Conservative versus Reform UK battle. I think Dame Andrea certainly now cemented that very clearly. You've obviously had as well the defection of Tim Montgomery, who is, yes, not an elected politician, but over 30 years of being a Conservative member. I think one of the co-founders of Conservative Home, a former advisor to Boris Johnson. Actually, I think one of the reasons that a lot of people are shocked is someone who was actually on Tom Tugendhat's leadership campaign, the most recent leadership bid. What do you think this sends out as a message for reform? Do you think you're seeing it, I suppose, more and more, the Conservatives feeling comfortable and confident enough that it's time to jump ship? Or do you think that, again, there is a benchmark with that, and actually you're fishing now very much in the Labour waters?
Well, I think we need to fish in all waters, of course, and lots of people who are not members of party, who quite often don't vote, who suddenly say, actually, these people look as though they know what they're talking about, they understand how things work, they've got a track record. So lots of people are saying, well, I didn't vote, but I would vote for you. And we've just got to keep working hard, keep spreading the message, and keep making people recognise that it's the two key things, the huge immigration and the madness of net zero, that is making people poorer. Net zero is driving up our bills, it's driving up the cost of living, and mass immigration means that per person, without growth, we all get poorer. So we just got to keep working really hard, and let's see where we get to. We mustn't be in any way complacent. It's challenging, but we'll just keep pushing on. And yeah, we're very excited.
Do you have a specific number in terms of what you're hoping to see in terms of elected councillors next May? Would it be 100, 150, 200? Are there any numbers out there?
No, you got to be bullish in politics, Jonathan. We've got to be bullish. We will certainly be standing, hopefully, in as many, if not all, of the 2,200 plus seats, I think, that are up for grabs next May. And if we keep doing well, we can win hundreds and hundreds of councillors, and I think we can win mayoralties, and who knows, we might even take some form of control of a council or a county council. So let's just keep pushing on. But if we keep talking about the right things, the things that really matter to people, then I think that spreads. And what we're also very excited about is the number of young people who are looking at reform, looking at us as individuals, as people with a track record of success, as personalities, and saying, actually, I like that. I want to back success. I want to back momentum. I want to back conviction and courage. And that's really significant.
Now, where I agree with you, Richard, is I think that if you voted Conservative in the 2024 general election, I think that would be quite hard for Reform to win those voters over. But there'll be an awful lot of those Conservative voters who sat at home who didn't vote at all, which I think is fresh pickings. But I'm intrigued to think that there's a now big opportunity for you to eat in. I agree with you entirely, by the way, that old school Labour, I call it old Labour, that traditional Labour Party that believes that in their country, believes in their community, believes that if you live in a council house, it's your responsibility to keep it clean and tidy, to respect your community, that wants tough law and order, that wants tough immigration, but also wants a state that intervenes. And for example, I think Reform's James Heal wrote about in The Spectator that Reform's policy in Wales would be looking at nationalising the steel industry in order to protect UK steel, which I think shows Reform's maybe ability to be more flexible. Are we looking to see any more defections from Conservative wings, or are we maybe going to see a Labour defection anytime soon that would really, I think, then set the hairs running?
Well, the arrival of Tim Montgomery was a very significant moment as a very influential Conservative thinker, and it was immigration that did it for Tim. It was those mass immigration numbers, and let's wait and see. I mean, obviously you'll be disappointed, but I can't give a running commentary on discussions that we may be having on an ongoing basis, because people can have confidence that any such discussions that may or may not be taking place can remain completely confidential. But wouldn't it be great if we secured people who traditionally that they felt their home was the Labour Party? And there is something very special about what you've just described, the traditionally socially conservative, patriotic people from the Labour Party who believe in strong defence, who believe in secure borders, and who believe in hard work. That would be great. The more and more we attract those. And you're also quite right that many people didn't vote in the last general election. Turnout was less than 6 in 10. And that's a shame. I'd love everybody to vote, because I mean, more people engaged. And I think that's a really healthy thing. So, yeah, we've just got to keep pushing on. Let's see where it goes.
And final question for me, Richard, is Stephen Wolfe was talking earlier about sort of reform needing to flesh out policy. I think that for reform at this moment in time, my opinion would be that you very much are able to just pick up off the general disenfranchisement of the two main parties, that the two-party system we've had for a long time is very much in peril, if not maybe crumbled beyond repair. When do you think reform has to come forward with a detailed policy agenda? The challenge I would say to reform is that it's not yet entirely clear what specifically you would do and how you would fund it. Do you think that you've got the benefit of time, a bit like maybe Kemi Badenoch would say she has now being in opposition, or do you think that you have to put a bit more flesh on the bones sooner to offer an alternative to the government?
Well, I disagree with Stephen, because actually we had a very comprehensive contract. It wasn't a manifesto, it was a contract at the general election. And basically, that still stands until things may evolve and respond to events. But basically, those are the principles. That's what we believe in. And so people just need to read the contract. You can see where we stand on certain things. The numbers might change a bit, but the clear principles are there of a smaller state that's not wasting money, doing healthcare differently, doing education differently, incentivizing people not to use the state system, having the only net zero we want is net zero immigration, and on we go, investing money in the justice system and in prisons and things, tough on law and order. So yeah, look, it's all there. And so I think that perhaps Stephen didn't see it. Stephen Wolfe didn't see it at the election time.
I must confess, the one person that I find interesting is Rupert Lowe's talking about, I think, the Great Reform Act or Great Repeal Act. I can never remember which way he's doing it, but the fact that in Parliament, and you have seen it now, and I've certainly experienced it in my 4.5 years, the ability, and I did challenge Matt Vickers on this, creating laws essentially for the sake, in my opinion, of virtue signalling and saying that we've done something, but adding laws on top of laws, that means that we spend more time having government lawyers sat in courts trying to make sense of what laws are passed and what laws were meant and what was the meaning at the time.
In truth, in order to get growth again, we've got to scrap a whole load of daft regulation that's accumulated over the last 15, 20 years. We want smart regulation, but we've actually got to encourage risk-taking, because that's how you create progress. We've got to create a culture of making money is a good thing. Being successful is a good thing. Running a business as an entrepreneur is a great thing. Employing people, let's make it simpler and easier, because that is a good thing. And when people do well, we all do well. So these are things that we stand for, and it's cheap as chips to get rid of daft bureaucracy and regulation. And there's so much of it I'm hearing in all walks of life that's driving us all completely and utterly tonto bonkers. And it achieves the square root of zip. But what it really does is actually, it says to people, I can't be bothered. It's just too much like hard work. There's some other mindless civil servant asking me to tick another box that does nothing, that sits on a shelf somewhere, and this stuff's got to stop.
I agree with you, and I think personally that's where any political party that wants to be as serious at all about trying to govern the country needs to invest its time and energy. It's not about creating new laws or creating new regulations. It's about merging existing ones, getting rid of unnecessary ones, and actually simplifying the law so we have less money being spent on lawyers in courts to explain what the law is, less confusion, and allowing an activist judiciary, particularly the ECHR, be able to try and pull apart what we're trying to do in our country.
Yeah,
and most importantly, allow the British people to understand what it is that government should be doing.
And wouldn't that be great? That would mean less lawyers and less accountants. Excellent. That can be a good thing. They can go and apply themselves more creatively.
Oh, fantastic. Well, Richard, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you have a good weekend. If I don't see you before, wishing you a Merry Christmas to you and all your constituents.